Isn't she pretty?
F*** off.
What? As it turns out, being introduced to Indian parents is even more worrying than being introduced to other parents, because there's so much pressure in the situation when you're a big pasty white guy from Scotland. So basically in India it's ideal that the partner is traditionally picked by the parents, but in our case, no. And that's not to say that, you know, I'm the most detestable creature in the world. I'm not what you would have picked, right? From that point of view, it's obviously weird for Paaru's family, to an extent for Paaru, and generally just unusual in general. To that end, we set up a phone call so that her dad could talk to me and ask some questions and ascertain that I did not have horns growing out of my head and the kind of demon tail flicking behind me. If you haven't watched yet Paaru talking about the very idea of telling her parents about it, then watch that video, watch all our videos, and send me presents. I'm stealing that from Adam Plumpy.
So it was around the time when I had to move out from the place that I was staying earlier, and I decided that I'll move in with him. At this point, my dad finally understood that this was going to a very serious route, and she's not really kidding about this. He came up to me and said that he would like to get on a call with you, know you better, know where you're coming from, like your family and your relationship with the family and all of that, and judge you. Finally, it was time for me to pass the
torch, the reins, whatever,
of stress to Jack. And at this point, I was quite chill and I was like, okay, my job here is done.
I don't remember her being chill. I remember her being tense. I was getting the nerves via you.
I want everything to go well.
Yeah, of course.
You know, like, I want them to see the best side of Jack. And I know that when you're meeting somebody, like, especially like an Indian parent for the first time, sarcasm won't help. I was just telling Jack, just be respectful. Just, like, nod to everything that he says.
Basically, she gave me the same briefing you would give someone to go through US airport security.
Except it's scarier.
Well, it's funny, actually, you mentioned that. I'll just quickly tell us. My grandfather is the reason we have that warning, because he made a joke about having a bomb in airport security, and they took it very seriously. He's Scottish. Well, it's funny because I'm put in this position, right? So you understand my position where I know there's a lot of doubt about me, and I know that obviously I understand kind of roughly where it's coming from. The whole kind of, he's not Indian, he's not kind of one of ours, so to speak. Is he familiar with our culture? You know, is this a fling for him? All these kind of, like, is he going to understand our culture? All that kind of stuff, right? There are all these sorts of worries. So from my point of view, I was quite determined to be impressive. And by impressive, I don't necessarily mean, like, you know, financially or anything like that. I just mean, yeah, just give a strong first impression. This is a smart, funny, caring, compassionate, intelligent, respectful, hopefully funny human being. They will like me. Whether that worked or not, it's up to them. The whole situation is a bit odd because I know that there's a lot of doubt about me based on things that aren't really in my control. I can't become Indian. I'm not going to pretend I'm actually an Indian. I can't be from her caste. I can't be picked by her parents. Like, I can't do anything about a lot of the things that are causing a problem. So that was the question to be determined. So in a lot of ways I felt, well, how much pressure is there on me really? Because I trust myself to basically present well. That was kind of my mindset going into it. What were you actually thinking?
So I was afraid that even if, like, Jack said something that meant well, it may not come across as well and he may not understand what Jack is saying. Also, the other thing I really wanted was I wanted my mom to specifically talk to you because she always showed more interest in you, become friends with you in some way, you know.
Well, what's funny about that is I remember the call either being entirely your dad or almost entirely your dad.
Yeah. So we did try to, like, bring my mom in, but she was too shy. I feel she was slightly conscious about her language.
Yeah.
I could totally say that she has like 101 things to talk to you about. It's just the language that's a barrier. And I don't blame her for that. Like, there is no need for her to know this language. Anywhere we go, like, my mom's the first person to have a lot of friends. Like, when we move places or go to a party, like, she easily finds it. Like, she's amazing with that. And people like talking to her. She's actually a very wholesome sort of a person. I was again afraid that you may not get to see that and she may not be able to communicate to you.
Given Paaru's dad worked for a big kind of multinational company where he met a lot of people who spoke English, he's been to England before, so he has a better grasp with the English language and Paaru's mum. I knew there'd be some language barrier, but I didn't kind of connect dots in my brain very well in terms of, remember that confidence I spoke about earlier? I didn't think about how much I would get kneecapped by not being able to be flowery and eccentric in my language. And the other thing I hadn't thought about, and I have an accent, and it's not the worst accent, but it's an accent. And two, I speak quickly. It becomes imperative to get your words out quickly, and not be patronising while I do, obviously, but just understanding that, hey, look, when they speak Malayalam, I can't even say the name of their language, let alone speak their language. You know I'm in no position to sit there and go, hey, you can't speak English. Like, that would be ridiculous. It was difficult for me. And so I came to that conclusion during the call that, oh crap, I can't use the words I normally use. I can't say the kind of jokes I'd say, or I can't. And so I start having to try and really change, if I'm asked a complicated question, I want to give a complicated answer to fully answer the question, but it doesn't work in English, So what ends up happening is we're on the call, me and Paaru, and then starts asking me questions. So the kind of questions you so almost like job interview questions, really, like education, financial stability, what do you do for a living, that sort of stuff. As I say, kind of job interview questions. So I'm just sort of answering them. Sometimes we would basically translate a little bit. Don't remember. I think he asked what Dad did. So again, trying to ascertain, was your dad a drug dealer? Like, so again, I think conversations like this are mostly about trying to affirm that it's not negative. I don't think your mum really said much at all.
That's one of the things that you can notice in an Indian society. Husband and wife are talking. It's mostly the husband talking.
Good idea.
Once the call started, I was calm. From the way my dad was behaving, I sort of understood that, again, he's not here to attack you. He was not being disrespectful at all throughout the call. He was showing genuine interest. I was just relieved.
So from that point of view, I wasn't worried about myself, and maybe you weren't, you didn't know that I can put a face on to an extent. Now, Paaru's dad didn't say anything that would have upset me. I haven't spoken to other Indian dads and seen how they were and seen if your dad was, more probing or less or whatever. I've just got one sample. So he could almost say, like, do you sacrifice babies for fun? And I would just think it's a normal question for an Indian dad. From that point of view, like, it was actually, when you think about it, kind of hard for him to actively offend, because I would just write off an offensive question as just being normal for Indians.
Now it makes me feel bad that I questioned his behavior. I should have just known that he wouldn't do that to someone.
But then you're thinking about worst case scenarios.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
From that sense, we were going in with different expectations, and the result was probably better than Paaru feared, but worse than I'd hoped. I felt like I didn't impress because I wouldn't have impressed myself, if that makes sense. And again, I just didn't feel like I could fully express myself. And maybe a bit like you're talking about your mum, where your mum can't fully express herself to me, maybe. The same way I felt like I couldn't fully express myself to them, which is natural. But I wasn't prepared for it. Enough. I have my own standard to hit, which I knew I didn't because I couldn't do as much as I usually would. The first of two funny things happened. The first one, and I blame you for throwing me under the bus here, right? Well, we're sitting the other side actually, but the camera's pointed at me, I'm sitting on the right hand side, and Paaru's off camera to the left. Now, we'd been dating at this point, and Paaru's dad basically kind of concluding his side of the call, basically said, okay, well, you guys remain friends until I get to meet you, that sort of thing. Paaru starts pissing herself laughing, and I've got to try and keep a completely straight face, right? Bear in mind, we're both in our late 20s. From the point of view of Western society, it's a bit like, come on, man, really? So I'm playing off as, yeah, we'll definitely do that sort of thing, trying to be as straight faced as possible, not helped by you laughing your ass off.
This is Indian parents for you. They're always in denial. So it's better to not address that topic at all.
I don't want to be too mean to Paaru's dad, because at the end of the day, I can get where he's coming from, especially for him. It's a huge shock. Just this white guy might be dating my daughter sort of thing, and he has to try and come to terms with all this. It's really not what he expected in his life. He expected to, kind of essentially have a hand in picking who Paaru was going to be with, and then I come along. But it was difficult for me because I'm trying to keep a straight face, as I say. And also, Paaru's dad was significantly more respectful than mine, because my dad was around at the time. I basically said to Paaru's parents, because they were asking me about my parents and my dad, and so I was like, do you want to talk to them? So I put my dad on the phone. My dad's very Scottish in this sense. And the kind of jokes I said, like, oh, I'm not going to make any of these jokes. I'm not going to do any of these things that might upset people, da-da-da-da. My dad didn't care. He just went in and made the jokes he wanted to make. He takes the phone call and goes, oh, I can see Paaru gets her looks from her mother. No. I am not saying anything. I'm not making jokes. I'm not doing anything because of lost in translation worries. So again, that joke works for me. I find it funny and it's just a joke and all that. sitting there going, for God's sake, I've spent this whole conversation trying not to offend the man, and you've instantly gone and said something that's directly like calling him, oh God. So yeah, that was my dad's brand of diplomacy. The UN, you may hire him now. Your dad took it well.
My dad took it well.
Seemed
My
to
mom was
understand it.
definitely like smiling and blushing at the compliment.
But yeah, you can imagine my mortification. I mean, don't get me wrong, I kind of laughed and like, I saw that her dad was fine. I was like, okay, phew. Like, Dad, for God's sake, because it could have torpedoed me, man. He could have single-handedly ruined everything. What a risk for no reward. But thankfully, all seemed to go well. He was very surprised that I said I found you funny.
I was also quite surprised that you found me funny because never in this relationship have you mentioned that.
I had to ad-lib something that wasn't based in any way on things that were attractive in a romantic sense. You know, I can't say, oh, she's got, you know, very pretty eyes or something, or I love the way she smiles at me, any of these kind of things. Like, I can't say that. So I had to kind of ad-libs like, well, she's very kind and she's caring, she's intelligent. And I was like, oh no, I've not got anything funny. No one finds fire funny, apparently. Jesus. You're one of these people, you get funny the more you know you, because you have quite a dark sense of humor. That aside, the call went fine, but ultimately I was kind of disappointed that I couldn't fully be me, in a sense. And so I was worried that maybe I might have come across as boring or uninteresting, unfunny, all these kind of things. So on the one hand, there's the small group of things that I can impact that I felt like I didn't do as well as I could have, and there's the large group of things that I can't impact. Well, I can't impact, so the little agency I had, I felt hadn't gone well enough for my standards. Felt like he could have gone away and said, I don't like this guy.
End of the day, the call happened. They knew each other a little bit more. Someday they just have to meet and get along well with each other.
And yeah, it was. And from there, well, we're still together, so at least it didn't break us apart entirely. Time will prove the doubts to not be true. Whereas if he sees over time that me and Paaru are serious about each other and that we, you know, keep going forward as a relationship, then yeah, that'll kind of settle those doubts by itself. So that's it, basically, for the phone call. And then, well, I go to India and meet her parents in real life. Woo. Watch more of our videos.
More
Bye.
drama.
More drama. Bye.